When it comes to poetry, one man has come to stand alone above all others of his generation. A man known for his disciplined free verse and controversial subject choice, Walt Whitman has stood the test of time. Known as the Good Gray Poet, Walt Whitman was born on May 31, 1819, the second son of Walter Whitman Sr., a Quaker carpenter, and Louisa Van Velser. The Whitman family, consisting of 9 children, lived in Brooklyn and Long Island, New York in the 1820s and 30s. At the age of 12, after dropping out of school to learn a trade, Whitman became a printer's apprentice in New York City, which is where his love for the written word began. He became largely self-taught during this time, reading many works by renowned authors such as Homer, Dante, Shakespeare, and also the Bible. In the year 1836, at the age of 17, Whitman began his short career as a teacher in a one-room schoolhouse on Long Island. He continued to teach until 1841, when he began to pursue journalism as a full-time career. Whitman founded a weekly newspaper, The Long Islander, and also edited several other papers. In 1848, Whitman became the editor of the New Orleans Crescent. It was in New Orleans, Louisiana, that Whitman witnessed firsthand the extremity of the slave trade. He later returned to New York and founded a free soil newspaper, the Brooklyn Freeman, in quiet boycott of slavery. It wasn't until 1855 when Whitman really found his calling for poetry. He took out a copyright on the first edition of Leaves of Grass, a collection of poetry consisting of 12 untitled poems. This collection, which was considered strange at the time for its content, was later reissued throughout the rest of Whitman's life. Leaves of Grass was not only controversial, but was also very influential in the realm of free verse form in the English language. Free verse allowed the author to write in whatever style he wanted, not being tied down to the rules of other forms. Leaves of Grass was also an expression of Whitman's life. In it, he celebrated himself and his country. He also celebrated democracy, fellowship, as well as the eternal cycle of life and death. For his time, many people viewed Whitman as pompous and didn't appreciate his undisciplined way of writing. Today, however, this collection is considered the embodiment of American romantic nationalism. In the collection, Whitman wrote a poem entitled I Hear America Singing. The use of a song was not uncommon with Whitman. It can be found referenced to in other works as well. The way in which America sings is original and paints a vivid picture of the joy of hard work and what the backbone of a nation looks and sounds like.
I hear America singing the varied carols I hear, those of mechanics, each one singing his as it should be, blithe and strong. The carpenter singing his as he measures his plank or beam, the mason singing his as he makes ready for work or leaves off work, the boatman singing what belongs to him and his boat, the deckhand singing on the steamboat deck, the shoemaker singing as he sits on his bench, the hatter singing as he stands, the woodcutter's song, the plowboy's on his way in the morning, or at noon intermission, or at sundown, the delicious singing of the mother, or of the young wife at work, or of the girl sewing or washing, each singing what belongs to him or her, and to none else. The day what belongs to the day. At night, the party of young fellows, robust, friendly, singing with open mouths their strong, melodious songs.
Another well-known work that can be found in Leaves of Grass is O Captain, My Captain, a poem about the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln in 1865. This poem captures the respect and dignity that many people felt for the 16th President of the United States. For example, Whitman refers to the captain, or Lincoln, as father, which shows deep loyalty and great respect. Truly, this poem captures the emotions felt by the country on that mournful day.
O Captain, my Captain, our fearful trip is done. The ship has weathered every rack, the prize we sought is won, the port is near, the bells I hear, the people all exulting, while follow eyes the steady keel, the vessel grim and daring. But, oh heart, 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 oh the bleeding drops of red, where on the deck my captain lies, fallen, cold and dead. Oh, captain, my captain, rise up and hear the bells. Rise up, for you the flag is flung, for you the bugle trills, for you bouquets and ribbon wreaths, for you the shores a-crowding, for you they call, the swaying mass, their eager faces turning. Here, captain, dear father, this arm beneath your head is some dream that on the deck you've fallen cold and dead. My captain does not answer. His lips are pale and still. My father does not feel my arm. He has no pulse or will. The ship is anchored safe and sound, its voyage closed and done from fearful trip. The victor ship comes in with object won. Exult, O shores, and ring, O bells. But I, with mournful tread, walk the deck my captain lies, fallen cold and dead.
A third poem that is listed in Leaves of Grass is called Song of Myself. In the 1856 edition, Whitman entitled this poem, Poem of Walt Whitman, in American. It was later changed to its current title in 1860. The use of the word self in this poem refers more so to an ideal, rather than Whitman himself.
I depart as air. I shake my white locks at the runaway sun. I effuse my flesh in eddies and drift it in lacy jags. I bequeath myself to the dirt, to grow from the grass I love. If you want me again, look for me under your boot soles. You will hardly know who I am or what I mean, but I shall be good health to you, nevertheless, and filter and fiber your blood. Failing to fetch me at first, keep encouraged. Missing me one place, search another. I stop somewhere, waiting for you.
At the outbreak of the Civil War in the 1860s, Whitman wrote freelance journalism and visited the wounded in New York area hospitals. He traveled to Washington, D.C. in December of 1862 to care for his brother, who had been wounded in the war. Whitman, overcome by the suffering caused by the war, decided to stay and work in the hospitals as a nurse. He stayed in the city for 11 years. Not all his time was spent working as a nurse, though. At one point, he found a job as a clerk for the Department of the Interior. Secretary James Harlan, however, upon discovering that Whitman was the author of Leaves of Grass, fired him due to the fact that Harlan was offended by the work. Although Whitman's actions and scandalous poetry may have had people questioning his lifestyle, no rumors were ever proven regarding the true orientation. After being fired from the Department of the Interior, Whitman struggled to support himself throughout the rest of his life. Some of his fans would occasionally send him money, which helped him barely scrape by. In the early 1870s, Whitman traveled to Camden, New Jersey, where he had gone to visit his dying mother and brother. Here he suffered a stroke and found it impossible to return to Washington. He stayed with his brother until, in 1882, another edition of Leaves of Grass was published, and he could afford his own house in Camden. Whitman spent the rest of his years working on editions and revisions of his literature, which included a little prose. His final volume of poems and prose was published in 1891 and was entitled Goodbye, My Fancy. Walt Whitman died on March 26, 1892. He was buried in a tomb he designed and had built himself on a lot in Harley Cemetery in Camden. Perhaps the most influential poet of his time period, Walt Whitman's controversial subject approach and perfection of free verse form is still unique to this day. Indeed, it revolutionized poetry. His writing and love for America will always be remembered.